Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Decisive Edge interview series, where Jewish women founders and CEOs tell the truth about how their Judaic heritage, values, and family traditions influenced how they really lead, how their Jewish lineage shaped the way they think, the way they decide, and the way that they show up in rooms that weren't always built for them. I am here to help reveal and talk about the wisdom that has been passed down through generations. Some of those stories have stopped these women, and some have actually saved them. And either which way, what I have noticed is that it ignites a fire within each of us, and they become what I call the Phoenix Rising. These are meant to be raw, honest conversations about generational influence, about legacy, and about the challenges and the strengths that come from knowing exactly where each of us came from. So I want you all to join me in welcoming my dear friend, Michelle Mekky, to the series. Hello, Michelle. How are you?
Hi, great to be here.
Oh my God, I'm so excited to chat more with you. And before we dive in, let me just share a little bit more about you with our audience today. So, Michelle is an award-winning former broadcast journalist and the founder and CEO of Mekky Media Relations, a Chicago-based boutique PR agency serving clients nationwide. After 12 years at Fox TV Chicago, where she rose to senior producer, she transitioned into PR and launched Mekky Media in 2016 following her ovarian cancer journey. Today, she leads an award-winning team specializing in media relations, executive visibility, and integrated communications strategy. Michelle also founded Elevated by Mekky Media, which is focused on media training and executive presence coaching. So, Michelle, are you ready to dive in and expose a little bit more about your upbringing?
I'm ready to dive in. I'll be an open book for you, Wendy.
Amazing. Well, let's ease us into this a little slowly.
Okay.
So, before we really get into, too much too fast, I just would love for you to just kind of set the stage a little bit for us and just take us back to what it was like growing up in your house, what it was like being Jewish. Some people experience like very loud and like everyone in everyone's business, and other just describe it as it just was kind of there. It was a quiet thing in the background. So I'd love to hear what your experience was.
Yeah, well, no, I had a very active Jewish experience. I mean, my parents were very committed to raising us to be observant. I mean, we were conservative growing up. As early as I can remember, we were going to synagogue on the high holidays, and even regularly, I was going to Hebrew school. We were definitely observing Shabbat at home and all the holidays. And it was just a very integral part of our day-to-day life. My parents, it was very important to them. They're both immigrants with a long story about their Jewish past as well. But I think they were very, very committed to making sure that we had a lot of exposure to the religion and really learned, what was so important about being Jewish.
I love that. And I'm curious to know, aside from your parents, like were your grandparents around as well? Did they influence sort of even, I mean, I can definitely say my grandparents influenced my parents and how my
Yeah.
sister and I were raised. So
Yeah.
I'm curious if they were around and also just kind of what influence they had and if it even created a different way that your parents wanted to raise you guys.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my maternal grandparents were not really around. I mean, my grandmother I mean, my paternal on my dad's side passed away when I was little. And he was raised in Dublin, Ireland, was born
Oh.
there, and was one of the only Jewish families in the city at the time. And so, and his father passed away when he was little. So he was raised by a single mother and had five siblings. And he unfortunately experienced a lot of anti-Semitism growing up, which really speaks to why being Jewish in his family was so strong and continuing the religion, given what he experienced as a child. My mom, on the other hand, her parents were around, and they have a very fascinating story as well. My grandfather actually escaped Nazi Germany. He unfortunately lost his first wife and his kids during the war, escaped to Russia, met my grandmother in Siberia, who was not Jewish, who converted to marry him. And then they came back to Poland,
Wow.
raised my mother and my uncles, and then eventually moved to the United States for a better life. And so his stories of survival really impacted me greatly, and also I think taught me about the strength that is in being Jewish and also the traditions and how important they are to be carried on. And so I think those two things from my dad and my mom together, like their history really speaks to why, it was so important for us as kids to really know our identity and know our religion. And I'll just add one more thing. I was
Yeah.
sent to a public school grade school growing up. My parents did not have a lot of money. My dad was an electrician and my mom didn't work. And, I would come home and all I knew was like I wanted to sing Christmas songs. I wanted to paint Easter eggs. I didn't really understand what being Jewish was as much as they showed me and they taught me when I was in school. It didn't exist around me. So that led my parents to really sacrifice to send me to a private Jewish school, Solomon Schechter. I was in fifth grade and left grade school to a public school to go into private school. And I feel like that's when my Jewish identity like really came alive because then I learned Hebrew. I was in prayers every day, integrated with Bible class and Torah reading, and then my bat mitzvah age, So I think they really sacrificed a great deal to pay a lot of money to send me to Solomon Schechter and then, my brothers as well. And so I look back on that and it hit me more as an adult and as a parent myself, like what that was all about and how, incredibly passionate they were about us really understanding Judaism then.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's so amazing. I can relate in a couple of different ways, especially in the going to school with, where you're kind of, I mean, I always used to joke, but it kind of wasn't that I was like the token Jew at
Yeah.
school. And, nobody really necessarily understood, a lot about my heritage. And, I remember I would always go to school and wonder why we didn't celebrate Hanukkah, but it was always
Yeah.
about Christmas and Easter. And I'm like, well, what about Passover?
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
what about
Yeah,
my
exactly.
holidays?
Yeah,
Right? And maybe
exactly.
that's why like every Jewish kid like wants a Christmas tree in their house, right? Like
Right. And the way I grew up is my parents, especially my mom, made like such a big deal out of Hanukkah. And we had all the blue and white lights in the windows, we had our menorah, obviously, and this
yeah,
ritual of like the gifts were like all on the dining room table. And every night we would open a new gift. And, it was to make us feel like we were just as good as our friends who celebrated
exactly.
Christmas. But when you really
Totally.
learn about the history of Hanukkah and like the observance of it, it sort of became a little bit, blown up to just make us feel better at the end of the day. But it was such a special memory for me.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm
Yeah.
curious to know, like, what of those traditions have you kept and how have you passed that down to your children and how you brought them up?
Yeah, so a lot has happened in my life to kind of change direction when it comes to religion. And it's something that I will say still I'm challenged with even today. I fell in love when I finished college with a man who's not Jewish. And that was not what I thought was in the cards for me. Like I thought 100% I was gonna marry someone Jewish, and I didn't. And there's a whole long story about that because I actually met him working for the Israel tourist office. He was the guy that walked in and sold us our computers. So it's not like I wasn't in an environment with a lot of Jewish people around me, but this is
Right.
what happened, and I think it happened to me for a reason. And I've done a lot of soul searching as to why, but it turned out to be someone that I really wanted to spend my life with, and so when that happened, he's actually from an Egyptian Muslim background. And, it gave me a lot of honestly like guilt really with what I was doing to my parents. I just definitely disappointed my dad. However, I chose love above all else in that moment. And so the rest of my life now has spent trying to figure out, what aspects of the religion I am continuing in my life. And of course, like I've pulled away from a lot of it, to be honest, because of the compromises I had to make. But my dad unfortunately passed away like over 20 years ago. So my mom is really the one who keeps most of the tradition alive in my house. I'm very close to my mom. She spends a lot of time with me. She stays with us for months at times. And it's always about celebrating the holidays together. And so we still have Rosh Hashanah dinners, we still observe Yom Kippur, we still do a Passover Seder, and then Hanukkah is interesting. I found myself doing a lot of the same things that my parents did for me. I'd wrap all the gifts, I'd put them on the dining room table, and turn it into an event. And
Right.
as they got older, I realized, okay, maybe I don't need to do this to this extent anymore,
Oh my God, I
but
used to have like a gift every night. Like it
yeah,
was like
right. It was a gift
I
every night. So, but then I'm like, okay, but then like by night 7 and 8, it was like socks and
right. Keychain,
chocolates. Yeah, the big gifts were like the first two
some
nights or
guilt.
whatever. But the kids love it, and they
Right.
understood Hanukkah and they understood their Jewish identity from just it's more from like I would say from a holiday and cultural perspective than keeping kosher at home. I mean, I grew up
Yeah.
keeping kosher at home. Like we had two sets of dishes. Like we switched dishes for
Same.
Passover. Like it
Same.
was serious.
Yep. Same.
And that has not continued in my life, but the religious tradition that the holidays have, the observances, and I think, just some of the, the way I interact with them and the way I
Hmm.
lead, as I know this topic is about,
Yep.
definitely comes from like my belief in God and how I was raised and how I feel about, my Judaism.
Yeah, and that's where I was going to go with this next because
Yeah.
I feel like, and my first husband Jewish, I married a Jewish man, had our boys,
Yeah.
got divorced. I'm now with a man who is not Jewish, and
Yeah.
it's interesting because I remember when I first started dating him. At first I was like, oh God, I think this is going to go somewhere. And I'm like, oh God, what is my mother going to say? Because my
Right.
grandparents had passed at the time. And, it is definitely something you think about because I feel like there are these, there are these rules that are really ingrained in us of
That's
like,
right.
I mean, I remember growing up, I had to marry a Jewish man. It
That's
was
right.
either a doctor or a lawyer. My
That's
sister
right.
married the doctor, I married the lawyer, right? Like, and if I didn't, I was going to be disowned. And I
That's right.
even remember, like, in my mid 40s, picking up the phone and calling my mom to tell her about, my current person, Jeff, and just being like, yeah, he's not Jewish. And is that okay? Like, do you still love me? Like,
I
even at like
know
45, I'm like
that
checking in with my mother,
that runs
right?
deep. That
It
runs deep.
does.
It does.
And I think that you point something out that's really valuable, which is it's so much more than just the religion, right? Like
Yeah.
it is a belief system, it is a value system.
Right.
And I'm curious to know how it is that you have taken those values and what it is that even you've created now with your husband and with your kids. Like you have now taken those values and those learnings and you've created your own way of being in your home.
That's
You're a
right.
standout leader at your company. I mean, what you've built over the
Yeah.
last decade is absolutely incredible. And
Thank
so
you.
I'm curious to just go a little bit deeper with you around like how has what you've learned shaped who you are as a leader? How have those values guided you throughout, the multiple I'll call them like transition moments in your life. How have
Yeah.
they inspired you to keep going and to really honestly set an example?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And I really never thought so deeply about how my Jewish background has guided me and how I live today. Because for so many years, I'm married 25 years now. So I've had to kind of adapt to living in a marriage where he is so supportive of my Judaism and I'm so supportive of his background. And we've been able to sort of just, build a life together that is based on mutual respect and openness. And what's so funny about it is when you really boil it down to like how we were raised, there's a lot of similarities in what we believe is right from wrong and what we believe. We both believe in God and we believe that there's a higher power that's moving us in a certain direction and we believe in the importance of just being a good person and treating everyone fairly with respect. And so I credit a lot of that to what I learned in my religion and also the importance of family and tradition. No matter what you decide
Right.
to adapt to and what works in your life, like that has really become like how I raised my kids. So I taught them about Judaism to a certain level. I showed them the holidays. They understand it. They love it. They know their dad is different. They know he has another background as well. But it's I think made me feel proud that I've shown them what's amazing about my life and my background and being Jewish. And now they're old enough to decide the direction that they want to go. Of course, is that how I was raised? Absolutely not. I mean, it was about you must continue the religion, you must marry within the religion. And
Mhm.
just like you said, Wendy, I mean, I felt for many years incredible guilt about disappointing my father, especially, who I knew came from such a difficult upbringing and so strongly protected his religion. But for me, it became more about just religion. It became about the human being that is Jewish, but there's more meaning to being Jewish than just how observant you're going to be and how you're going to raise your kids and were you bar bat mitzvah. I've
Yeah.
been able to sort of adapt it to my life and it's very strong in my heart. I mean, I will always be proud to be Jewish and speak about that proudly to anyone who asks. And so, but I think when I think about like how it's led me to live my life, I mean, there's definitely been moments that have been challenging in my life. And the first thing I do is I say the Shema. It's the prayer that I will never forget. When I'm on an airplane and I'm feeling nervous, I say the Shema. Before I went in for my ovarian cancer surgery, I completely prayed to God. When I lost my job, I sat on my deck and I looked out in the horizon and I prayed every day. And so I know my kids see that and know that. And I believe that having that like guiding light in my life has helped me navigate the hard times. And then when you talk about starting a business that was probably like the hardest thing I've ever done. And so I do believe that there was God in some form, like leading me through that. And I talk about the universe, I talk about God. I mean, I kind of believe in all of it as sort of being part of what being Jewish is for me now. It's very spiritual. And I've learned about overcoming challenges. We can make anything happen. We can push forward. We can use our creativity to build something beautiful. And it's different for everyone. And so I think a lot of those values have helped me grow and manage other people who come from all different backgrounds and have multiple opinions on a daily basis and clients and personalities and but I feel like I know I'm a good person. I know my soul is kind and I know my upbringing has really guided me on who I am as a human being today. And it feels good to actually reflect on that because instead of focusing on the guilt I might feel or letting someone down because I chose not to go to synagogue on a certain day or, the things that are the guilt sides of being in a religion, I think I'm
Yes.
trying to overcome and
Yes.
just look at the beauty of the religion, right?
Absolutely. You like bring up so many good points, Michelle. It's like I can't keep them straight.
I
But I
know.
think, but what I'm hearing a lot too, and what you're saying is, what I do believe your parents have instilled in you, and what I'm feeling very deeply is they have they have shown you strength, they've shown you resilience, they've shown you,
That's
what
true.
it is that you're capable of, right?
Yeah.
And, to your point, you know, having a belief in a higher power, having trust, and that knowing is, in order for that to happen, there is a
Yeah.
requirement of you having that strength within yourself. And I think that you exude that. Every time I've met you, every time I've been in your presence, like that is what you really truly, and I mean it, it's what you really exude. And I think that, you've also talked about this a little bit as well, is that, and God knows I'm guilty of this, is that
Yeah.
sometimes though we have to be careful because we do put others, like family's number one, right? If
Right.
you asked me what my family said our number one family value is, it would have been family. Like family
Yeah.
was number
Yeah.
one
Families
all the
first.
time.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed is over my 20 plus year career myself, like sometimes I interpreted that as sacrificing myself for other
Yeah.
people. And I know that you have said that that's something that you have also, I don't want to say struggle, but it's something
Right.
that's very top of mind for you. And so I'm curious to know how you navigate that and,
Mhm.
maybe even in this conversation, like what's sort of coming up for you around that, and how do you overcome that, let's call it guilt
Yeah.
on putting yourself first at times and also trusting that that means that you're not sacrificing other people at the same time.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the biggest obstacles I would say I faced in my life. And I think back a lot on my childhood and wonder, like, how did I become that way? Because I think my parents did an amazing job raising me and my brothers. However, I think I was the one in the house that was always just worried about everyone else's happiness. And I wanted peace around me all the time. And there wasn't always, it was a very high emotional house. My dad came from a very challenging background. He had a temper, so I was always trying to like keep everyone happy. And so I
Mhm.
think and I was the perfect student and I had a wonderful bat mitzvah and I read the Torah perfectly in the Haftorah and I spoke fluent Hebrew and I did everything I was supposed to do. But I didn't really think as I was going through all that, are you taking care of yourself, Michelle? Or are you just like doing your duty? And I think I was doing my duty as a child, but then
Mhm.
as you get older, taking care of yourself is so important. And it's been the one thing that's like eluded me most of my life. And it's not that I wasn't taught on the importance of eating healthy or exercise. It's all around us, but I just think my heart is so much focused on taking care of people. So I went into a career where I was managing people, and now I run a business where have employees I take care of. I got married, I had children, family first. It was all about the kids. I think we've talked in the past about how I don't know if I ever looked at myself in the mirror in my 30s. It was all about the children,
Yeah.
and I sacrificed everything without question. And I always felt like that's what I was taught to do. I watched my mom be this like very devoted wife and caretaker and chef. And, she just was always there for us and very nurturing. And so I sort of became that person. But then somewhere along the way, like I lost complete self because I got sick. I was diagnosed with cancer, which ovarian cancer was out of nowhere that came. I didn't even expect it. I didn't feel it. It was the biggest shock of my life. And I realized then, like, oh my God, like, what am I doing? Like, why do I think I can work 12 hours a day? Like, I'm not, invincible. Like, but it was a gradual wake up call, very gradual. And I think now that, you can look at it and say, well, my kids are grown, they graduated college, they're working full time. now I feel like I can focus on myself, but I really don't want to wait that long. You know what I mean? Like we all have to find ways, no matter how young our kids are, or if we don't have kids, like what works in your life. And so I've learned a lot of very scary lessons that now I
Mhm.
speak about to try to help, other women wake up and sort of realize, okay, like this might be like how we were raised, but it doesn't have to be how it is,
Right.
you know? And I'm not
Yeah.
perfect. I'm not perfect. I mean, there are definitely days that we all struggle, and I just want to sit on the couch and, have my popcorn and not go to the gym. But I think it's been a dramatic improvement on my life since I've made myself number one and helped me just achieve and feel, the best I've felt probably in my whole life.
Yeah, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And it's, again, what's bringing up or what's coming up for me as you're talking to is, even as I'm thinking back in my childhood, same thing, right? Like my
Yeah.
kids always, you know, my kids come in
Yeah.
among the first, right? I don't
Yeah.
necessarily say that they are first,
Right.
necessarily all the time, but part of what I had to unlearn was sacrificing myself for other people, especially in those moments where I knew that it was time to start, investing in me. And I mean, I
Right.
have countless examples of my childhood where I remember, like, if you asked me to describe my mom, who passed away about 4.5 years ago, but if you asked me to describe my mother was the most selfless woman I ever met. Like, she put everybody else in front of her.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because at one point in time I would have said like, "Oh, well that's what you're supposed to do. That's
Right.
what mothers do.
Right.
That's what good people do, right?"
Right.
And again, my mom was one of the greatest people on this earth while she was here. And
Yes.
at the same time, like it also taught me that self-sacrifice is a hefty price to pay
Yeah.
in this life, right?
Yes.
And it's one of the things that I've really tried to unlearn in my life, in my business as a leader, because, again, there's a priority for everyone in every place, but I think that, a lot of it was also ingrained from her family around
Right.
survival mechanism, right?
Right.
Like to survive, to make sure that everybody moves forward together. We've got to put family first. Together is how we move forward,
That's right.
right? And so, I don't know if there's anything that comes up for you around that
Yeah, I
too.
mean, no, that, and I'm just thinking about how, interesting it is then when you lead a business and you have a team, and I'm still sort of wired to make sure everyone's happy and cared for around me. But it sometimes comes up against my, belief in putting myself first and how important that is.
Hmm.
And it's almost like a daily balance that I'm
Hmm.
trying to sort of negotiate. And when it feels, like this is what I have to do, this is my role
Hmm.
versus no, 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 no. Like if you're not okay, no one else is okay. And I think that's where it doesn't mean you're selfish or, you're not dedicated to everyone around you, but you are the core of your life. And once we feel good, like everyone around us will feel good because we, can handle all that is coming at us on a daily
Right,
basis. I've
right.
learned that lesson. I'm still learning it. I'm still learning it.
I know.
And then my kids are interesting because they have a little bit of both my husband and I. So I wouldn't say they're falling into my exact patterns, luckily. They're more athletic, they're more fitness inclined. But we've encouraged that, and
Sure.
so I think it's a different time now. And I just wanted to add about my kids, it's like I haven't been perfect at raising them with Jewish knowledge. A lot of marrying someone out of the faith means you really have to sort of compromise and figure out like where is that common ground and
Mhm.
where are those sacrifices you have to make about not, maybe being as observant as you once were. So, if you ask the kids, I think they would probably say, they might have wished they learned more, and I think that's the challenge of when you are Jewish and you marry someone who's not Jewish is figuring out how are you going to carry on those important values of the religion in a way where your children then will understand and be able to pass things on, you know? It's definitely been, I would say, like one of the hardest parts about who I chose to marry and
Yeah.
feeling confident about, my religion and my value system, being able to be passed on to them. But I do feel like I've raised great humans. I look at them and I'm very proud of them. And they're good people. And, maybe they don't know all the prayers by heart, but they definitely, know what's important. So,
Like that's why the English is written right
yeah,
underneath.
yeah, exactly. Sometimes they look at me like, Mom, we don't know this. I'm like, I know, it's
Yeah,
okay.
it's okay. So what would you say, like, what do you hope your kids inherit from you that maybe is different from what you inherited? And take that good, bad, neutral, whatever it is, however,
Yeah.
whatever comes up first.
Well, I also, for some reason, inherited, I think it was because I would push myself so hard to achieve and to keep everyone happy, this piece of perfectionism that is still kind of alive in me. And and also insecurity. I would say I sort of have a little bit of both. And those are two things that I really, hope that they don't really continue to have to the level that I have had, especially the insecurity piece. I feel like with like that just doesn't exist right now in my kids. I mean, maybe a little bit, but not to the level that I had. And I can't really explain why I did have that, but I did in a huge way. And so it took me many years to overcome my fear of public speaking and believing in myself and seeing the talent that I have in me, and it took me probably starting a company to finally see
Hmm.
it. But
Hmm.
I think the kids have been able to be raised in a way where, all they've really been lifted up. And I think I'm sure they, second guess themselves sometimes, but I feel proud that I don't see that in them. And then my daughter probably has a bit more of the perfectionism than my son. She's definitely pushed herself hard and keeps herself very busy like I did at that age and still do. But she's very calm. And that's another piece that I love. I love the calmness in my children. And I think that's from my husband, because I'm definitely very high energy, very outgoing, very much personality like my dad. My mom was a professional singer, so I got all that like glitz and glam from her. But the kids are really chill. And I like that because I feel like that will help them, navigate the challenges that life will bring.
I love that. I know, isn't it so fascinating when we look at our kids and we're just like, I've said this a million
Yeah.
times. I'm like, man, if I had their level of confidence,
Oh,
if I
yeah.
had their level, at their age,
I
right?
know. I know.
It's
So
it's
true.
it's remarkable. And it's also like, wait a second.
Yeah.
I had something to do with
Yeah.
this too,
Well,
right?
they'll never really actually verbalize that,
I was
but,
gonna say,
we know
they'll
that.
never give us the credit at all. But we know,
Well, that's right.
Michelle.
We know that.
We
We know.
know.
We know that. Yeah, exactly. And I agree. Sometimes I'm amazed at how confident, our children are and
Yep.
how they move through life. And maybe it's a part of, not only their upbringing, but all the opportunities they have now and all the activities and all the
Yeah.
just school looks very different than what it did when we were
Yeah.
in school. And I think that it's the and health and wellness and mental health is such a big focus, way more than it was when we were growing up. So I
Yeah.
also feel proud that that's being passed on to them now.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, it
Yeah.
even brings up like, uh, Michelle had shared some information with me before we jumped on. And, one of the questions that I'm asking all of my guests is, what is a word or a concept, a Hebrew word or a Hebrew concept that has been a really strong compass for you? And I love the word that you chose and how it really has become something that I'm actually going to even say that I feel like you see as a reflection back from even your kids as a good reminder. I'd love for you to share a little bit more about what that word is and like what that means for you and how you allow that to be your guide.
Can you remind me what I said?
Yeah, you said Malha,
That's
which
what I
is
thought.
means yeah,
Okay.
which means
Malka.
queen, which
Yeah.
I like it
So
was I love it.
so there's a few reasons why I chose Malka. As I said, struggled with lack of confidence most of my life. It really plagued me, where I actually tried to, speak many times and struggled and my hands shook and I actually chose to become a TV reporter to go through live shot training to try to get over it. So I put myself in like the hardest position, right? And so now, fast forward to today, and I've done a lot of work with a stylist named Tali Kogan, who's also Jewish and Israeli and speaks Hebrew. And, she has a whole line of jewelry called Malkari, and Malka is a big part of it because she's really elevating women to have that level of confidence. And I think I've connect to that word so much now because I feel more confident than I've ever felt. And I love like using that word in my mind. If the doubts ever come up again, I'm like, no, Michelle, like you're a queen. Malka, you're a queen, that confidence I think is projected onto my children now, where they see their mom as this, leader, owner of a business, confident woman, able to make anything happen, literally recovered from the depths of despair, by surviving a terrible cancer, by losing my job and struggling most of my life, to really get to this place. Like, I feel like I've risen to earn that word in my life, whatever that means, being a Malka is being that confident, you know, rock, right?
Yes.
And I've always just been very connected to it. So it's come up in my life now. And it did when I was a kid, and it was also going to be like my Hebrew name for a while was Malka. Now it's actually Michal, but it was part of my identity
Mhm.
always. So it is one of those words that I just always remember and love.
I love that so much. And I've had the privilege of being in your presence both in person and then, a couple times on Zoom as well. And, you embody that, Michelle, like truly. I mean,
Thank you
every
so
time I've
much.
been around you, like you are the embodiment of confidence and strength. And, it's been so fun to get to know you and your upbringing and your values a little bit more deeply here during our conversation today. And I'd love before we kind of bring this conversation to a close, I've got some fun rapid fire questions.
Okay, cool. I hope I do well.
You're gonna do great.
Okay, okay.
So the first question is because I love this one because I don't know, maybe it's like a big thing in my family, but okay, pick one. Which did your family make better, matzo ball soup or brisket?
Oh my gosh, hilarious. Matzo ball soup.
Okay, same with mine.
Mom's
Right?
is the best.
Brisket's hard. I'm
The
sorry.
best.
Brisket
Yeah,
is like tricky.
totally.
Okay. What is one word that you would say describes how you lead?
Ooh. Compassion.
And what is a rule you broke that you feel like changed something or everything for you?
Wow. Well, rule I broke. Probably marrying someone not Jewish. That was my big rule that I still live with today. It was a big rule I broke.
Yes. And look at you now, my
I
friend.
was a rebel. Yeah, I was a rebel from a perfectionist to a rebel. That's how I look at it.
I'm a disruptor over here, so
Yeah, yeah,
you're speaking
totally.
to the choir.
I guess it hinted what was to come in my life.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, buckle up,
You're
mom.
gonna disrupt the world. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, oh God, my mother
Yeah.
just like Wendy. It was always like the head
I
shake,
know.
like, oh, Wendy, like,
I
what are we gonna
know.
do with
I
this
know. I
one?
still feel guilt when I tell my mom things. I don't think that ever goes away. I know.
No, it doesn't. I mean,
Yeah.
it took me 2 weeks to tell my mom I was separated from my husband,
Oh
and
gosh.
that was like the worst of it all.
I
And she
know.
just kept saying, "I know something's going on, and you're not telling me." And
I
I'm like,
know.
"Everything's fine, mom. Everything's fine."
When I
Yeah,
told my mom who I was going on a date with my now husband, I said, "It's nothing. Like it's just a drink. Like I promise you. Like he's a guy I met at work." And she's like, "Is he Jewish?" I'm like, "I don't think so, but it's no big deal." And then I ended up marrying him. Whoops, sorry.
Oh
Yeah.
well.
Yeah,
Oh
exactly.
well, it's all
5 years
good.
later.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And here you are with a beautiful life and
Yeah.
family. Okay, last question. Ready? If you were to get a tattoo on your arm, what would it say?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question because I've really thought about that. I would,
Every Jewish girl has thought about getting a tattoo, but then we hear our grandparents say, but then you can't be buried in a Jewish
and
cemetery,
we're
at
not
least.
allowed. I
Right.
know.
So I'm like,
Right.
oh, great. So we'll just tattoo it
I
with,
know. I've thought many times about getting the
henna.
chamsa. My daughter and I love the
Oh,
chamsa symbol. It
yeah.
means a lot to us. And I would say, what I really believe is my biggest motto in life is make it happen. So, I would say either make it happen or believe
Mm,
because that word means a lot for me. And all those moments that I kind of doubt myself when I see the word believe or I say it to myself, it helps me like rise to the occasion. And as much as, I talk about being a queen, I still very much have those moments. So seeing that word on my wrist would really help me out. But, God
here
maybe
we are.
doesn't want me to.
Yeah. I know I keep teasing my kids. I'm like, I'm gonna get one
I
day because
know.
mine is actually, well, I'll save it for my interview. So
Okay.
go watch my interview if you guys want to know
Okay.
what
That's a good
my
tease.
what my word is because it's already been planned out. And I tell my kids, and
Oh.
they're like, "Mom, you can't do that." And I'm like, "Yes, well, maybe I can. I don't know. We'll see." Anyways, well, Michelle, okay. I love you. I really
I
do.
love you
Oh
too.
my
You're the
God.
best.
You are too. This has been so fascinating and so enlightening. Thank you so much for sharing your stories and your wisdom and your values and just so much of yourself with our audience today. I cannot thank you enough. This has been just an amazing conversation.
I'm so honored, and you've really given me a lot to think about as well. It's nice to reflect and look back and kind of move forward in gratitude. So thank you so much, Wendy.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you. Thank you. And you guys, this was just one of 18 amazing conversations that I get to have with these incredible Jewish women who are leading in their own respective lives and in their businesses. And they're doing so through what they learned growing up, what they've had to unlearn, how they have relearned, what they've moved through to get here. And I hope that each of you are also seeing that none of us are alone in this journey that we are all navigating. And we all get to feel seen, we all get to feel heard. And I want each and every one of you to know that. And I hope that you see some of yourself in Michelle and in all of my other guests that I have the privilege of interviewing during this series. Thank you all so much for tuning into today's series episode with Michelle Mekky. Thank you guys for tuning into the Decisive Edge. And this is where ancient roots create modern power. I will see you guys in the next interview. Sending so much love and light always. Mwah. Bye, everybody.